My $3 million Bugatti sparked an HOA war. They called the police when I said no, but my doorbell camera caught everything. The blare of police sirens shattered the quiet afternoon, two squad cars screeching to a halt in front of my meticulously kept home in Greystone Palms. Officer Ramirez stepped out, his hand instinctively hovering over his taser, his voice sharp as he barked orders at me. Me? Ethan Miller, standing barefoot in my own driveway, a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich in hand, utterly bewildered. He demanded I step away from the vehicle. What vehicle, you ask? Oh, just my $3 million flame-orange Bugatti Chiron, innocently purring in the shade. How had my peaceful Saturday dissolved into this absolute chaos? My unforgivable sin? Refusing to let the HOA president's daughter borrow it for her prom. Welcome to my personal suburban nightmare, or as the HOA prefers, the Greystone Palms Residential Harmony Committee. I'd moved to Greystone Palms 3 years prior, seeking refuge from the relentless noise, drama, and the irritating habit of people labeling everything as aesthetic. At first it seemed like a dream. Pristine lawns, hushed streets. As a 42-year-old freelance architectural designer, I cherished my solitude, my morning espresso on the porch, and my collection of luxury cars, my pride and joy, unlike the regrets other men seem to accumulate. My garage was a sanctuary, home to the Bugatti, a timeless 1967 Shelby Cobra, and a Tesla Model S Plaid for my daily errands. I worked from home, disturbed no one, convinced I'd found my slice of paradise. Then Brenda Jenkins entered my world, HOA president, social climber extraordinaire, and the living embodiment of every passive-aggressive Pinterest board known to man. She'd seized the presidency 6 months after I arrived, running unopposed because everyone else was too terrified to challenge her iron will. Her mission? To elevate community standards and preserve property values through rigid aesthetic compliance. Her chosen weapon? A gold leaf monogrammed HOA violations clipboard, which she wielded like a suburban scepter. Brenda wore her power like a badge of honor, her Botoxed smile so chilling it could make toddlers weep and dogs howl. Her husband Gary trailed behind her like a well-trained poodle, nodding robotically at her every pronouncement, all while discreetly sipping from a flask he foolishly believed no one noticed. Oh, Gary! Or rather my Bugatti, became her latest obsession. She declared it visually aggressive, damaging the cul-de-sac's vibe. It began with her friendly notices, delivered with that terrifying frozen smile. First, a citation for unapproved paint color on my driveway. Charcoal gray, apparently too moody for the cheerful spirit of Greystone Palms. Had she no idea I'd spent $12,000 on that color, specifically chosen to complement my home, complete with heated coils for winter? Then came the accusation of excessive gleam from my luxury vehicle, claiming it caused retinal strain to passing residents. Unbelievable. She even attached a medical article she'd clearly plucked from the first page of Google, but the absolute peak of absurdity was failure to provide neighborly support when asked nicely, adorned with a purple-inked smiley face. This, because I'd politely declined to contribute to her voluntary fund for seasonal door wreaths everyone would be mandated to display. Next, the surveillance phase commenced, making me feel like an unwitting star in a spy thriller directed by a home goods enthusiast. Brenda installed a Ring camera pointed directly at my porch, masquerading as community safety, yet capturing only my property. And then there was Gary, her husband, whom I caught operating a drone over my backyard during my morning coffee, hovering perilously close to my bedroom windows, like some perverted mechanical hummingbird. Unluckily for him, the drone met its tragic end in my koi pond when I accidentally activated my sprinkler system at precisely the wrong moment. My fish were spared, but the drone was not, sinking among the lily pads. Gary, in his golf attire, valiantly tried to retrieve it, but slipped on an algae-covered rock, emerging from the pond like a creature from the Black Lagoon. I watched from my kitchen window, fighting a losing battle against laughter. Brenda, meanwhile, escalated her vendetta with the fervor of a general planning a siege. She accused me of running an illegal car dealership from my garage, despite my mere 3 vehicles and 0 sales history. She actually filed a formal complaint with the city, claiming I operated an unlicensed business just because she'd once seen me washing the Bugatti on a Tuesday. At the monthly book club, she spread outlandish rumors that I was laundering money for Swiss speed cartels, whatever those are. Susan from 2 houses down even recounted Brenda's 30-minute monologue explaining how my architectural design firm was an obvious front for international crime. She demanded the Bugatti be moved to a less emotionally triggering garage, as if such a place existed. She actually suggested I rent industrial storage space 40 minutes away because its presence was supposedly causing her emotional distress and hindering her inner peace during her morning yoga on her front lawn. And the notes. Passive-aggressive missives appeared on my windshield, on her personal stationery adorned with little butterflies. One read, "A true neighbor considers the visual comfort of others." Another, "Luxury is best enjoyed in moderation." The strangest simply declared, "Orange is the color of aggression and chaos," complete with a drawn, frowning face. Did she really think that would work? She even orchestrated a neighborhood meeting solely about automotive aesthetics and their impact on community wellness, attended only by herself and Gary, because everyone else recognized its sheer lunacy. The final straw, the moment everything spiraled, arrived one Saturday. Ashley, Brenda's daughter, strutted up my driveway with the unshakable confidence of someone who had never once heard the word no in her 18 years. Clad in a designer sundress, clutching a Starbucks drink that likely cost more than most people's lunches, she declared, with a dramatic flip of her professionally highlighted hair, that Daddy says you have to let me take the Bugatti to prom because Mom is on the HOA board, and she said it counts as a community engagement initiative. She actually air-quoted HOA rules as if reciting a magical incantation. I stood there in my garage, an oil rag still in my hand from detailing the car. I looked at her, then at the gleaming Bugatti, then back at her. I simply blinked. And then I uttered one calm, quiet word. No. I even continued polishing a spot on the hood. Oh, what a colossal mistake that was. Ashley's face morphed from red to a furious purple, strikingly resembling an angry eggplant. She stomped her foot like a defiant toddler and shrieked that her mother would hear about this. Just 3 hours later, while I was inside enjoying a sandwich in an automotive engineering documentary, the police arrived. Brenda had called 911, weaving a tale of me abducting her daughter's prom experience and emotionally holding her hostage via car. She actually told the dispatcher I was creating a hostile living environment by refusing to share community resources. The dispatcher must have been utterly baffled, probably wondering if this was some bizarre code for an actual crime. Yet, officers were dispatched because Brenda had liberally peppered her story with keywords like threatened, aggressive behavior, and emotional violence. They arrived expecting a volatile domestic dispute, only to find me serenely watering a bonsai tree, clad in gym shorts and a vintage racing tee, completely oblivious to the theatrical drama unfolding around me. I had my earbuds in, engrossed in a podcast about Italian automotive design, and nearly dropped my watering can when I saw them. Officer Ramirez, looking utterly perplexed, asked me to explain. Calmly, I invited them inside, offered water or coffee, which they declined, and presented my doorbell footage from that morning. The video, thanks to my expensive security system installed after Brenda's initial surveillance, was crystal clear. There was Ashley dramatically fake crying on my driveway, her eyes bone dry, checking her phone between sobs, even pausing for a selfie with non-existent tears. And behind my ancient oak and rose bushes, Gary crouched with a camcorder, a suburban spy popping up like a prairie dog for better angles, wearing camouflage pants with a polo shirt, as if one half of him was hunting and the other golfing. But the real gem? The audio, which captured Brenda rehearsing her 911 lines like an off-Broadway villain, practicing inflections for maximum dramatic effect. She actually said, and I quote, "Remember to mention the emotional violence part. That really sells it," followed by her practicing a distressed voice. The officers watched the entire spectacle, then exchanged looks of what I can only describe as professional amusement. One officer let out a small chuckle, which quickly escalated into full-blown laughter, soon joined by the other. Officer Ramirez, wiping a tear from his eye, declared it the most ridiculous call he'd responded to in 15 years on the force. Before leaving, they asked for a photo with the Bugatti, which I gleefully allowed. They even turned on the flashing lights for one shot, drawing half the neighborhood outside to witness the scene. Brenda, peering from behind her living room curtains across the street, was a picture of furious non-amusement, her face pressed against the glass like an angry ghost. The very next day, I drove to the county office, a folder bulging with 2 years' worth of meticulous documentation. My lawyer, a specialist in HOA disputes who had literally written a book on HOA overreach, practically drooled when he saw my evidence. Every notice, every email, every threatening butterfly-adorned letter, I had kept them all. He proclaimed it the best case he'd encountered in a decade. It turns out HOA leadership cannot use drones for private surveillance without consent, a clear violation of privacy laws. They cannot weaponize police resources over personal grudges, which constitutes false reporting and misuse of emergency services. And they certainly cannot forge HOA bylaws on Microsoft Word and pass them off as legacy guidelines, which Brenda had been doing for years, inventing rules to suit her agenda. An emergency audit was swiftly launched by the county. Within a week, 3 investigators arrived with boxes, demanding documents. Brenda's cherished clipboard was confiscated as evidence, and she actually cried, clutching it to her chest like a beloved pet. Gary's drone was registered as an illegal UAV, earning him a federal fine of $5,000. Even Ashley's prom photos were subpoenaed because Brenda had tried to Photoshop the Bugatti into the background after the fact. The editing was so abysmal, the car appeared to float 3 feet off the ground, bathed in lighting from an entirely different dimension. She'd posted it on social media, falsely claiming I'd eventually agreed to lend it. Libel on top of everything else. The investigation unearthed layers of corruption that stunned even the seasoned investigators. Brenda had been manipulating meeting minutes for 4 years, adding agenda items never discussed and deleting resident objections. She'd fabricated violations to levy fines, pocketing the money for personal purchases, while claiming they benefited the community. One resident was fined $300 for a spiritually aggressive garden gnome. Another paid $500 because their doormat was the wrong shade of brown. She'd terrorized residents who dared to challenge her, once calling the health department on a family for a backyard barbecue, claiming it was a health hazard. That family spent thousands defending themselves against her baseless accusations. But the ultimate revelation came when the auditors meticulously examined the HOA finances. Brenda had siphoned off $18,000 of HOA funds to construct what she grandly called a community meditation pergola. In reality, it was a fully stocked wine bar for her book club, complete with a mini fridge, a sound system, imported Italian tiles, and color-changing mood lighting. She'd shamelessly labeled the expenses essential community wellness infrastructure. The receipts exposed purchases for wine refrigeration units, cork preservation systems, crystal glasses, and even a $3,000 automated wine dispenser. And she'd been charging her book club members to use it, pocketing the cash herself. I unveiled every single detail at the next HOA meeting with a PowerPoint presentation I'd spent a week perfecting, titled, "How to Weaponize Suburbia for Evil, a Cautionary Tale in Greystone Palms." The room was overflowing, standing room only, with people pressed against the windows trying to glimpse the unfolding drama. I had spiral-bound handouts of evidence for everyone. By slide 6, which exposed the drone surveillance with footage of Gary's humiliating plunge into my koi pond, Brenda was openly sobbing into a stolen bottle of Pinot Grigio pilfered from her illegal pergola. By slide 12, meticulously comparing her forged bylaws to the legitimate ones, highlighting every discrepancy, she had resigned her position, effective immediately. She flung her resignation letter at the board, stormed out, but not before dramatically tripping over a microphone cable. Local news pounced on the story within hours. Reporters camped outside both my house and Brenda's. The headline screamed, "Bugatti owner destroys HOA tyrant with spreadsheet." The story exploded online, the hashtag #OurBugattiGate trending for 3 days, as people flooded social media with their own HOA horror stories in solidarity. Brenda's side real estate business, which she constantly peddled at HOA meetings, lost half its clients in a week. Her enraged face, pressed against her window watching the police admire my car, became an instant meme. The state HOA Oversight Board launched its own investigation, uncovering a shocking 5 years of violations, including blatant election tampering. Brenda had been discarding votes against her and fabricating votes in her favor. They discovered she'd created false proxies for homes for sale, granting herself extra voting power. And the kickbacks. She'd been taking 20% from every contract from preferred vendors she'd forced the HOA to use. The county prosecutor, seeing the mountain of evidence, decided to press charges: misuse of emergency services, embezzlement of HOA funds, election fraud, and filing false reports. Brenda faced up to 3 years in prison and $50,000 in fines. When the judge read the charges in court, all 27 counts, Brenda Jenkins actually fainted, collapsing dramatically right there in the courtroom, her designer heels clicking against the floor as she fell, her perfectly styled hair fanning out like a blonde spiderweb. Justice, it seemed, had finally arrived in Greystone Palms. What a wild ride.